Is there a birth control pill for pets? And that is actually funny that someone should ask that, because I just read an article about a contraceptive vaccination for dogs that's been created by scientists actually in the country of Chile. I guess they're looking for an inexpensive option to try and help with the country's, I guess they have a huge wild dog population there. So yes, we're going to talk about that. But I think, first of all, let's go back to just the basics of reproduction in our pets, and that'll make it easier to understand how this new vaccination works. So we'll start with male pets because they are just simpler. Sorry, boys. So currently the main way that you sterilize a male pet, whether it be dog or cat, is to surgically neuter them. And I just want to explain, because I think that some people have some confusion. When we neuter a male pet, that's actually different than when a man has a vasectomy. When we do a neuter, we actually surgically remove the testicles only, but the remainder of the reproductive tract is left intact. But basically, we want to remove the parts of the male reproductive tract that are responsible for making sperm, and also for making the major male hormone, which is testosterone. So some people that are listening, especially male listeners, might be thinking, why in the world would you want to do that to your pet? I mean, the obvious reason is population control. When we do this, the animals can't father young anymore. And then sometimes there's the more, thoughtful reason, male pets that maybe have a genetic disease like epilepsy or bad skin, or, something that they're going to pass on to their offspring. Well, if you neuter them, then you don't put a whole bunch of more dogs on the ground that have that same problem. But then there's also medical reasons why you would want to neuter your male pet. You can stop them from getting testicular cancer, obviously, because they won't have any testicles anymore. Certain types of rectal cancer that we talked about, perianal adenomas, also prostate problems. And then also just the behavioral benefits. When you neuter a dog, they're way less likely to roam and, cock their leg and mark their territory and hump your leg in your pillows. And also they're less likely to fight with other dogs. So is there any way to stop a male pet from reproducing without doing this surgery? The vaccination that we're going to talk about in a minute can actually be given to both males and females. But until it's available, the only other thing that I can think of that would maybe stop male dogs from reproducing, it actually has a hysterical name. It's called the stud stopper. And this is like a little waistband that you strap around your male dog, kind of in front of the family jewels, kind of like a loincloth, and it has a vinyl back layer so they don't splatter it while they pee, which is just kind of gross in my opinion. But apparently dogs who wear it are not uncomfortable, but they can't actually mate, and they can still, use the bathroom. So there's all kinds of sizes of stud stoppers you can get if you want to go on Amazon and look at those. But other than that, surgical neutering is really the only thing we have available for male cats, definitely, and male dogs, unless you want to use the stud stopper. Okay, so on to females. Female dogs, totally different than males. If you have a female dog, they first come into heat around 6 months of age. Smaller dogs maybe go into heat a little bit earlier, and the bigger dogs maybe go into heat a little bit later. And then once they've started, they come into heat maybe twice a year. Again, the smaller ones, it might be more frequent than that, and the large breed dogs, it might not be as often as twice a year. And heat cycles, or estrus in dogs, last for about 2 to 3 weeks. And there's all kinds of symptoms that they'll have that are pretty obvious when they're in heat. So right now, the main way that we prevent dogs from coming into heat and having puppies is the same way that we talked about with dogs. It's surgically. We spay them. And when we spay them, we remove the entire female reproductive tract, so the uterus and both of the ovaries. And it's permanent, and of course it's irreversible. And it is a pretty major abdominal surgery. They have to go under general anesthesia. But we do it a lot, so we're good at it. So nothing to worry about. So why remove the ovaries in dogs? When females get a similar surgery done, it's just the uterus and not the ovaries. But the reproductive cycle of the female dog is entirely different than what goes on in a woman. We remove the ovaries because those are where the hormones are produced that make the dog go into heat. So if we didn't take them, then, your dog would still be in heat. It would still want to mate with other dogs. So, and also taking the ovaries and removing those hormones, just like with male dogs, there's a lot of medical reasons to do it. You're going to almost eliminate their chances of getting breast cancer if you spay them before they ever go into heat. They won't get ovarian cancer. They won't get uterine cancer. And then, of course, the obvious that, they won't get pregnant. If anybody out there has an intact female dog, you've probably seen that they can go into false pregnancy, which is where they look very similar to being pregnant. They even make milk, and false pregnancy is a dangerous place to be because that can lead to uterine infections, which is called pyometra. That's an infection of the uterus, and that it is really serious. It's life-threatening when a dog gets a pyometra. So spaying is going to keep that from happening. And then again, breast cancer, if you think about it, dogs have 10 to 12 breasts. So when they get breast cancer, it's a big deal. So spaying them before they go into their first heat cycle will eliminate that. So what else can we do currently in female dogs to stop them from coming into heat and stop them from making puppies? There are a couple of pills that have been tried in dogs. There was one called Check Drops. There's another one called Ovaban, but lots and lots of side effects with those pills. Liver problems, and sometimes the dog would have a bad odor and their personality would change. They'd gain weight. They'd be sleepy and sluggish, and like the human birth control pill, it predisposed them to certain types of cancers. So neither of those pills are currently labeled for contraception for dogs in the United States. But now there is this vaccine. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's not actually available for general use yet, but they're trying it in Chile. So this vaccine, I guess it was developed, people were first tried it in sterilization of pigs, and it's a type of what's called immunological sterilization. So the vaccine is made up of a protein that comes actually from the E. coli bacteria, and that protein makes antibodies against what's called gonadotropin. And gonadotropin it's a substance that's made in the pituitary gland of the brain, and it's the precursor to all the sex hormones. So to make a long story short, the vaccine makes antibodies against gonadotropin, and if there's no gonadotropin released from the brain, then there can't be any progesterone or estrogen or testosterone made in reproductive parts. So there's basically no sexual activity when these dogs are given this injection. It's like immunological neutering. It's like a vaccine against production of sex hormones. And so the effects would be similar to if the dog was neutered or if the female was spayed. And it's kind of nice because it can be used in either one. And apparently there's only one vaccine that's needed for the thing to work. It doesn't take several vaccines. And I'm also reading that it's reversible, although I don't know how that would be. I don't know if there's antibodies against gonadotropin, how you could make them go away, unless maybe there's something that makes antibodies against the antibodies against gonadotropin. So this is a much more promising way of medically sterilizing pets than some of the things that have been tried in the past. Some of the other things that we try to mention cause tons of side effects, and sometimes the animals would still want to mate even though they were sterile. So this looks like maybe it's promising. I'm a little bit concerned about handling something. I worry about our staff members who are still in their reproductive years handling something that's that strong. But I guess they will work out the kinks. Now, currently, it's not being used in cats, so which is kind of a bummer because cats are the ones that really seem to have a population growth problem. Why are there so many stray cats out there? Why are cats so good at reproducing? So cat heat cycles are completely different than dogs. Cats are what's called seasonally polyestrous. So what that means is that starting young, like around 5 to 6 months of age, cats can go into heat between January and October in this part of the world. So their cycle is influenced by seasonal changes, like how long the daylight hours are. So starting around January, when the daylight hours start to get a little bit longer, a female cat will come into heat, and they actually are in heat every 7 to 10 days until either they get bred or the amount of daylight decreases, which would be 10 months later in October. So unlike dogs twice a year they go into heat, and if you can just keep the boys away twice a year, you're okay. Cats are pretty much in heat all the time, except for maybe those few winter months when the daylight hours get really, really short. And then to make things worse, a lot of us keep our cats inside and they're exposed to artificial light. So those cats might actually cycle year round. So in other words, cats just have lots more opportunity to get pregnant than dogs do. And that's not all. They can also get pregnant again before they're even done nursing a litter of kittens. And for that matter, I should probably mention that cats can get pregnant again before they're even done with their heat. So in other words, a female cat might allow more than one tom to mate with her before she comes out of heat. So it's possible to have a litter of kittens with different fathers. And that's why sometimes people will have a litter of kittens and 3 of them will look exactly the same and then 2 others will look completely different. To put it in lay terms, they have different baby daddies. And dogs can do this too. Dogs, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a purebred dog and they've got papers for it, but it doesn't look anything like the breed that it's supposed to be. I had a dog like this, and I think probably what's going on is those dogs have come from a breeding situation where the royal female, let's say it was a golden retriever, was mated to the appropriate royal blooded golden retriever male, and that allows the litter to be registered as a litter of golden retrievers. But then before the female comes out of heat, she also mates with the low-life kennel dog next door. So, you might have most of the litter be golden retrievers or whatever royal breed you wanted it to be, and then some of the puppies in that litter will be mixed with something else. So kind of an interesting little note there. Now, if your cat is in heat, you know it. They act really weird. They will do this weird posturing with their head and their front legs near the ground, and their rump is up in the air, and they'll start urinating all over the place. And I mention this because we've actually seen clients that bring in cats that they adopted that they thought were spayed. They get them for Christmas and they think that they're spayed, and then maybe a month later in January, this cat starts acting really weird and it starts urinating all over the place and rubbing on everything, and that's because it wasn't actually spayed and it's coming into heat. So just like in female dogs, if you spay that cat, you're going to eliminate the risk of ovarian cancers and uterine infections, breast cancer, all those things that we talked about. And just like in dogs, the pills, the check drops and the Ovaban tablets don't really work so well in cats. Tons and tons of side effects. But maybe this vaccination will be perfected to the point that can be used in cats too, and that'll help with some of these feral cat colonies.